So you washed your bone straight hair and you want to know how not only to reinstall it, but also how to take it from frizzy and unflattering to smooth, silky, and bone straight again. In this video, I'm going to show you how to reinstall your lace front wig for that flawless melt into your skin look from start to finish, and how you can straighten your wig to get it silky, smooth, and bone straight again. So grab your supplies and let's slay this install. Hello beautiful, welcome welcome back to my channel. Here we are at factory settings, and no long talking, let's jump right in. I have my hair braided back into cornrows. When you're doing a wig install, you want to make sure that your base is flat, especially if you have thick hair. Go ahead and braid it back or slick it down to ensure that your wig will lay as flat as possible. But just because we're putting on a wig doesn't mean we need to neglect our hair underneath. As you can see, my cornrows have grown out quite a bit over the past 4 months. This is because before I start the installation process, I like to give my hair a little TLC. I like to start by spritzing it with some leave-in conditioner. This one I'm using is by Aussie, and I use this to saturate my hair all over and then gently massage it into all of my hair and my ends. This helps to keep my hair under my wig moisturized and prevents it from drying out too much. Once I'm done massaging that in, I like to go in with a scalp treatment like a balm like this one, or sometimes I'll just use a hair growth oil to help lock in that moisture. Using my finger, I grab some of the balm, apply it in between my braids, and then massage it into my scalp. As well as I do add a little bit to my edges. Once I'm done with that, I do repeat the same process, except this time using the hair growth oil. If you're lazy, you can skip this step if you want to and just go straight to the install. But if you are on a hair growth journey like I am, it is important to prep your scalp first. I like to wear my wigs for weeks at a time, which is why I find it important to do this. But overall, using stimulating and nourishing hair care products help to promote healthy hair growth, even under your wig. Now that our scalp is prepped, let's start the installation process by slicking back our edges. I will be using this edge wax and an edge brush, but feel free to use any holding gel or edge control of your choice. After grabbing some of the product on my brush, I applied it to my edges and then brushed it through. Now I'm using my fingers to slick down the hairs and push them back. I then repeated this process all across my hairline until I had my edges slick, pushed back, and laying down flat. Once you're done, you should have something that looks like this. Now this is great. You can as well move on from this step, but if you want to take it a step further to really secure your edges and ensure that none of your precious baby hairs get stuck in any glue, grab yourself a freezing spray or a holding spray and spray down your edges. Then grab your edge brush and brush this through to make sure that that spray is evenly distributed. Again, use your brush and your fingers to slick and push back your edges the same way you did with your edge control. To set this all into place so that it doesn't move, we're going to blow dry it. I'm going to be using the cool setting on my blow dryer. You can as well use the warm or hot setting to dry it down faster. However, because I use an adhesive spray, I have to use cool air so that it doesn't get sticky or tacky and dries down properly. I use my other hand to hold down my edges where I want them to stay and then blow dry it until it is completely dry. I then repeat this process all across my hairline until everything is dry and set into place. Once you're done, your edges should look something like this. as you can see, my edges are set into place, and though I am scratching them with the comb, they are not moving. This is an optional step, but this does act as an additional barrier between the glue and your hair. So if you want that extra assurance that your edges aren't going to get pulled out or stuck in the glue, this is a great step to add. Now let's clean off any excess oil or dirt from our skin using some rubbing alcohol and a clean towel. Pouring out just a bit on the towel, I will then use this to clean off along my hairline, removing all that excess oil and dirt, as well as wiping down my forehead. This ensures that no oil or dirt left behind will interfere with the bonding or staying power of the glue. Once that has dried down, our next step is to apply a skin protectant. This will serve as a barrier between your skin and the glue, protecting your skin from any irritation as well as increasing the staying power of your install. I'm spraying this along my forehead area and on the sides of my face where I will apply the glue. I'm making sure to cover my face so it doesn't enter my eyes. Here, I think I sprayed a little too much because the alcohol in this was very strong and it was kind of suffocating. For a less messy application, spray the protectant onto a clean cloth or paper towel, then dab it onto your skin where you will apply the glue and dry it down completely. When it comes to wig caps, the thinner and more sheer your cap is, the more undetectable it will be under your lace. On my left, I have a traditional wig cap, and on the right, I have an HD wig cap. As you can see, the HD cap is a lot thinner and a lot more sheer than the traditional cap. Using a thinner cap significantly cuts down the effort you have to put in to blend it in to your skin or make it blend under your lace. Also, using a wig cap that is closest to your skin tone is also important for this reason. Now go ahead and put on your cap, pulling it down as far as you can get it so it can lay flat, making sure to tuck in all your hairs in the back as well as pulling it down over your ears. Once you have your cap on and it looks something like this, grab your scissors and now we're going to cut out our ear holes. Holding the cap down over my ear, I'm going to make a slit in the back rather than in the front. Cutting the cap in the front will give you a wide gaping hole that won't fit over your ears. So starting towards the back of my ear, I like to make two small slits. The first one is to puncture the cap, and then the second one is to make the hole that we've created slightly bigger for my ear to pass through. Now grab your finger and slightly stretch out that hole you've created and slip your ear through the hole like this. Once you're done, your cap should lay flat against your ear like this, and should still be covering your hairs on the side so that you don't put glue directly on them. Then repeat this step to the other side. To secure the cap, you can either go in with your lace glue, an adhesive spray, or a freezing spray. If you're using an adhesive spray, all you would need to do is spray your hairline with the spray and then dry it down until it's completely dry. Now this method works fine, but I prefer to use my lace glue to secure my cap. Applying gentle pressure to the bottle, I squeeze out a little bit of glue at a time and place it slightly in front and use this to outline my hairline. I then use my rat tail comb to spread out this glue as thinly and as evenly as I can, which is why applying a little bit of glue at a time and spreading it out into thin layers is very important. The thinner you are able to spread out your layers, the faster your glue will dry on its own. And I'm only spreading this out about 1/2 inch, by the way. Also keeping in mind to work as quickly as I can because the glue does start to dry the moment it hits your skin. Once I'm done, I like to allow my glue to air dry. If you spread out your glue thinly enough, it will dry on its own and you won't need to use a blow dryer. This is what my glue looks like when it's dried down completely and clear, and this took less than a minute. Now let's cut off the excess cap that we do not need. I like to slip my thumb under the cap, placing it in the middle. Grabbing my scissors, I then cut a hole above where my thumb is. I then continue this cut to the rest of the cap that is laying on the sides of my face. When I reach my ears, I cut off that cap that is connecting my ears, and then repeat the same thing to the other side. Once you're done, you should have this piece in the front that you can now gently slip over your head and wear as a headband. Adjust it to where you want it to stay and then cut off any excess that doesn't lay down flat. I love cutting the cap this way because that band helps to hold the cap in place so that it's not slipping and sliding around under my wig. This is also a great alternative if you don't want to sew the cap down with a needle and thread, as well as it holds all of my hairs in the back in place so that none of my hair is sticking out. Now let's cut off the remainder that is in the front. I start by making a vertical slit in the cap so that I can be able to pull it up to where I want to cut it. You can pull the cap up and cut as far back as your hairline, but I like to leave a little bit of cap in front of maybe about a centimeter because I prefer to apply the majority of my glue on the cap rather than on my skin, but this will greatly depend on where you want to lay your wig. If your natural hairline is lower, carefully lift up the cap and trim away the excess little by little until it matches your natural hairline. But if you have a little more forehead space and like to wear your wigs a little bit more forward, like I do, then you can leave a little bit of excess cap in the front. Once I was done, this is what my cap looks like. To push this a little further, we now have to tint the cap and that band so that it gives a more natural look and blends right in under our lace. To achieve this, I am using my foundation shade and a makeup brush. I poured out just a little on the back of my hand and blended it out slightly. I then applied the makeup to the cap, starting with the band that I placed on top of my head. Blend this out all over to tint the rest of the cap. However, as I'm blending, I am not bringing the makeup too far down into the glue. Do not apply makeup to where you've applied your glue. We don't want it messing with the adhesion of our glue when it comes to laying down our lace, nor do we want that to affect the longevity of our install. Once you're through with that, you should have something like this, and now we have our complete bald cap. Now you want to grab your wig and put her on. Adjust your wig to where it's comfortable and where you would like your lace to lay. Once you have your wig positioned, gently lift up the front part of the lace, bend it upward so that the front part of our cap where we applied that glue is clearly visible. This will make it easier to reposition our wig when we are ready to glue it down. Now we can start applying our layers of glue. I started my first layer by outlining the front part of my cap. Now with the end of a clean rat tail comb, I began spreading out my glue. The same as before, I'm spreading out the glue about 1/2 inch to 1 inch wide to make sure I have enough surface area for the lace to grab onto. Making sure to spread the glue out as thin as I can, because remember, the thinner you spread it out, the faster it will dry on its own without you having to use a blow dryer. So don't put on too much at one time. And this time, we're not allowing the glue to dry down completely. We're just going to dry it down until it's clear and tacky. And I'll show you what that means a little later. Once I was done spreading out that first layer, this is what it looks like. Once your glue is dried clear, like this middle part here, you can go ahead and start your next layer. However, if it's still white, like it is on my sides, let it dry down a little bit more before moving on to your next layer of glue. It is important to allow your glue to dry clear in between layers to prevent it from being overly cakey and appearing white and super messy under your lace. As you can see, I'm applying the majority of the glue on my cap and only applying a small amount to my skin. I prefer doing it this way because the cap acts as a barrier between the glue and my skin, which I believe contributes to the longevity of my installs. In my experience, I have found that when I apply the glue directly to my skin, my lace does lift a lot quicker, especially in high humidity or when I'm sweating, compared to when the glue is more concentrated on the cap. However, as I stated earlier, if you have a lower hairline or a smaller forehead, go ahead and apply the glue directly to your skin and blend it out as you can. That's totally fine. Because when it all comes down to it, the longevity of your install to me is solely dependent on the quality and lasting power of the glue that you use. So to ensure that your install will hold and last as long as it possibly can, make sure that you are using high quality products that are sweat and water resistant, like the Touch by Misty lace glue or the Hold Me Down glue by Erica J. These are excellent for oily skin. Now that our layers are completed, I did a total of 4 layers, by the way. Let me show you what I meant by your glue should not dry down completely, but should be clear and tacky. Do you see how the glue grips on to the end of my comb when I touch it? That's what I mean by tacky, because the same way that the glue is gripping onto my comb is the same way that it'll grip on to your lace. Once our glue is clear and tacky like this is how we'll know we are now ready to glue down our lace. I use the scrunchie to tie back the rest of the hair so that it doesn't get in our way. And then go ahead and grab your wig and bring it forward. Before we start pressing anything in, we need to readjust the wig to where we want it to sit. I like to bring the wig slightly forward in front of where we placed that glue, maybe about 1/2 centimeter. And then once I have the wig positioned where I want it to lay, starting from the middle, I gently begin to press the lace into the glue using my fingers. Once I have the middle secured where I want it, I then move on to the sides. I'm being mindful not to touch the glue too much because we don't want any oils or dirt from our hands to get into the glue and mess with the glue's adhesion. We're gently just pressing in the lace so that it stays where we want it to stay and doesn't move around. Now that we have our lace where we want it to stay, we can now grab our comb, and we're going to use the teeth and the back of our comb, as I'm showing, to now apply subtle pressure and really press in the lace into your glue. I like to start from the middle and then work my way to the sides. What I'm showing you here is how my glue has started to turn white because I started sweating. But not to worry, I'm going to show you how we'll fix that a little later. Once I'm done pressing in the lace, as you can see, we have these little pieces in the front that are not glued down. Because we moved the lace forward in the beginning, we now need to go back and glue these front pieces down. I like to squeeze out a little bit of glue onto the back of my hand and then use my rat tail comb to apply the glue. You can as well go in with the glue bottle itself, but I find using the end of the comb gives me more precision and control to where I'm applying the glue, especially in smaller spaces like this. Once I'm done with the first layer, I like to use these little hair clips to help hold the lace up and out of the way so that I can free up my hands and work on other sections without having to worry about the lace sticking into the glue before it's dry or before I'm done with my layers. And I'm doing 4 layers of glue in front the same way that I did before. Once I was through with my layers, I went ahead to take off the clips, and then same as we did before, go ahead and press down the lace into the glue using your rat tail comb. Now you may ask, why go through this in the first place? Why can't I just stick the front part of the lace down in the glue the first time around? If your lace has already been pre-customized, and by that I mean pre-plucked and pre-cut to fit your exact hairline, then by all means go ahead and stick down your lace exactly where you placed your glue the first time or where your natural hairline starts. But if you are a beginner, 9 times out of 10, the hairline on your wig will rarely ever match or mimic the exact shape of your natural hairline. Placing the lace forward slightly in front of the glue prevents you from having to go back and doing the dreadful chore of trying to remove glue from your skin in places where there is no lace. Pulling the lace forward and then going back to re-glue the front pieces allows you to place glue exactly where you know you need it and prevents you from having to deal with the hassle of trying to get it off your skin in places where you don't, and potentially ruining the rest of your install, messing with the glue glue remover or alcohol. Once I'm all done gluing down my lace, I went ahead to grab my elastic band and I'm going to tie this firmly right on top of that lace. Not too tight to where it's uncomfortable and hurting, but tight to where you know it's firmly sitting on your head and pressing in that lace. And we're going to give this some time to let it sit and melt down that lace. If your wig is already pre-styled, I'll say let it sit for about 10 to 15 minutes before taking it off, but I'm going to go ahead and let this sit while I style the rest of my hair. Our style is going to be super simple today. I started by roughly parting my hair down the middle using my rat tail comb, and then I grabbed my wax stick and I began applying that to the hairs on top of my head around my parting area. The wax stick is going to help us tame any flyaways and help the hair to lay down super flat once we start pressing it with our hot comb. Before then, I grab my comb to just comb out the top hairs to ensure that all the hairs are flowing in one direction, nothing is tangled, and to distribute the wax that we just placed into the hair evenly. Before bringing out our hot tools, we need to protect our hair from heat damage by spraying it with a heat protectant spray or applying some type of heat protectant serum. Holding the spray about 6 inches away from my hair, I like to save time by just evenly spraying it all over my hair and then brushing it through. But for a more thorough application, you can do this in sections. When brushing or detangling your hair, always make sure that you're starting from the ends of the hair and working your way up rather than starting from the roots and trying to brush downward. Working your way from the ends to the root helps the hair to naturally detangle itself, as well as prevents further tangling, knotting, and unnecessary breakage. Once I was done detangling, I sectioned off my hair and then pinned the rest out of the way using a hair clip. I'm doing medium-sized sections. You can make your sections as big or as small as you want to. However, if you have thicker hair, I recommend that you part your hair in smaller sections so that you can achieve the straightest and sleekest look that your hair can possibly get. To straighten your hair, grab your preheated flat iron, starting from the roots, clamp down on the hair using gentle and even pressure. Begin now to slide the flat iron down the entire length of the hair until you get to the ends, and then let go. Once you let go, your hair should be straight. For an even sleeker and straightest result that you can possibly get, you can do the chase method, which is using a comb like this one or a brush to follow behind the flat iron as you're dragging it down the hair as I'm demonstrating. This helps to keep all the hair straight and flowing in one direction as you're flat ironing for the smoothest and sleekest possible result. You can repeat these steps 1 to 2 times per section or until the hair is as straight as you want it. However, do be mindful to not go over the same section excessively multiple times or using excessively high heat, as this can cause extensive heat damage to your hair. Once I'm done with one section, I went ahead to part another and then repeat these steps until I have straightened all the hair. Once we're done straightening the hair, we can now work on flattening the top of our head and pressing down these hills and mountains and laying them flat to achieve that natural and neatly pressed look. You can go ahead and go in with your hot comb just as is, but to get the wig to lay as flat as possible, I like to divide this top section into sections. To that section I just parted, I add a little bit more of that wax stick, comb it through, and then go in with my hot comb to press and lay down those hairs. I'm not just using the comb to comb it through, but I'm using this back part to flatten and lay down those hairs as well. And then I just comb over the remaining section and then do the same to the top as well as to the other side. Do be mindful, don't leave this comb in one spot for too long because this is a hot tool and it will burn you. After I was done with that section, I decided to go ahead and take off the elastic band since I have had it for a while and it was starting to hurt my ears, but this is what the lace is looking like. She looks okay, she looks good, but we still have just a little bit more work to do with her. But before we get there, I need to finish pressing down the top of my wig as well as clean up this part because it is looking all types of crazy right now. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and do. Once I'm satisfied with how my part looks, I went ahead to continue pressing down the top of my head using my hot comb, the front, the back, the sides, making sure to get everything as flat as I possibly can. Alright, finally let's finish up with our lace. Right now she looks good, she looks melted, but we have these little hairs that got stuck in the glue when I tied it down because I failed to pluck them out or hot comb them back before gluing down my lace. So later on I'm going to have to go back and pluck those out for a cleaner look, but that's okay. That's the reality of it. Sometimes things come up or we miss a step that we don't see and we have to go back and fix it. Not to worry, we'll fix that later. Let's focus on getting rid of this white transparent cast that is on the lace using this lace tinting mousse. I like to pump out a little bit of the mousse onto like some cardboard or a piece of paper or tissue nearby. Here I'm using the card that the wig cap came in, but once I pump it out, I like to give it a good mix to make sure that the color is completely even before I start applying it to the lace. I then pick up some of the mousse with my edge brush and then apply it to the lace, making sure to evenly spread and blend it out all across the lace on my hairline, or really anywhere that I see that white transparent cast of the lace. But for the sake of getting an even color all around, I just go ahead and apply it to the lace all over my hairline. And after I'm done with this, I'm going to blow dry this until it is completely dry, which you will see me do in a little bit. You can as well use your makeup or foundation to tint your lace to your desired skin tone. If you do choose to use makeup to tint your lace, do keep in mind that over time the oils in the makeup could cause your lace to start lifting. So to ensure the longevity of your install, do choose products that are not heavily oil based. Now that we've tinted our lace to closely match our skin tone, let's do one final melt to lock everything in. For this, you can use a spritz, melting spray, or whatever freezing or holding spray of your choice. I'm going in with this Eben Sport Adhesive Spray because it is sweat resistant, and because I live an active lifestyle, it helps my install to last longer. I like to go in and just lightly spray it directly onto my lace and then blend it out with my finger as you see me doing. I'm not applying a whole lot. I'm lightly pressing down on the nozzle so that I can control how much is coming out, so I can avoid spraying too much on the lace that it starts dripping everywhere and spraying way too much that it takes forever to dry. If you are not yet comfortable spraying directly from the nozzle and you want a more precise application, you can definitely spray some into a small cup and then use something like a flat makeup brush to apply it directly to the lace. And as you see, I do like to work in sections. I'll spray one part of the lace and then dry it down completely before moving on to the rest of my hairline, because if you do allow this to sit too long, it will start to cause your lace to lift. Once that's dry, I'm going to tie this down again with my elastic band for about 10 to 15 minutes to really give it time to melt that lace. Taking off the band about 10 minutes later, this is what we have. The lace is melted and it's giving scalp. However, I do have some orange spots where I applied too much of that tinting mousse, but not to worry, we're gonna fix that later. As you can see, she's pretty much stuck. When I say stuck, she's not going anywhere for the next 2 weeks, okay? All we need to do now are the finishing touches. For me, it means grabbing my fine-tooth comb and combing out, or like brushing out, these front hairs so that they are fluffy and don't just look stuck to my forehead. I'm using my comb to just go back and forth in like a zigzag motion until I break that cast of the adhesive spray and then comb it through. through. Then I grab my concealer so that I can clean up my part. I squeezed out just a little bit, and using the applicator brush that it comes with, I'm going to place that concealer right onto that lace where I parted my hair. And then I use my finger to gently rub onto the concealer to soften up that harsh line. I'll then repeat this step like 1 or 2 more times until I am satisfied with how my part looks. This step is optional, but I do recommend it because not only does this help to define your part, it also helps to conceal those grid lines in the lace so that they aren't so apparent, as well as it helps give it that skin-like and more natural look. The next step is 100% optional, so definitely skip it if you do not have this problem, but I do not have any root touch-up spray, so I'm going to use this makeup palette and dipping into this black shade with a small flat makeup brush. I'm using it to fill in those bald spots or those sparse areas where I have over plucked in the front or where hair has shedded out, as well as to clean up my part and make it look as straight as possible. This will help to give me that fuller and more clean look, as well as I'm going in now to remove all those little hairs that got stuck in the glue and are just sticking out in the front. And lastly, I dipped just a little bit of rubbing alcohol onto my towel to clean up my forehead. And lastly, I'm going in with a few drops of this Moroccan oil to add a bit of softness and extra shine to the hair, rubbing it onto my palms, glazing the top of my head, and then applying whatever is left to the rest of my hair. And yeah, this is pretty much the end of the install. I gave my hair a quick brush through just to make sure everything was detangled, soft and flowing. And yeah, this is the end of the install, and these are the results that we've gotten. Our hair is laid and slayed, and the lace is giving scalp honey. So if you did enjoy this video and found it helpful, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe, as well as drop me a comment down below or questions if you have any. I love you, but always remember Jesus Christ loves you more, and I'll catch you on the next one.